Hello and welcome. I'm Rawia Alami and this is the Dailies, where we take a look at important news stories, reports, analysis and articles published in newspapers and media outlets across the world. Several headlines dominated the front pages of global newspapers today. British newspapers talked about Prime Minister Keir Starmer's reset regarding Brexit, with most seeing it as giving into Brussels. American media focused on Biden's cancer diagnosis, and the different reactions ensued as a result, while other stories like President Trump's leaving Russia and Ukraine to work out the ending of the war by themselves received a lot of attention. For one, Max Booth published an opinion article today in the Washington Post saying that President Trump is overly patient with Russian president, even as the latter stonewalls American ceasefire efforts. The article critiques Trump's handling of the Russian-Ukraine war, highlighting his contrasting attitudes towards critics at home and Vladimir Putin. While Trump is quick to lash out at U.S. figures, he remains patient with Putin, even as the Russian leader undermines Trump's peace efforts. Despite promises to end the war quickly, Trump's negotiations have indeed failed, with Russia refusing to compromise and continuing its aggression. The article argues that Trump avoids confronting Putin and instead praises fruitless tasks. Meanwhile, Ukraine's defense industry is growing stronger, making the country more self-reliant, but it still definitely needs U.S. support. The author concludes that Trump's lack of leverage and reluctance to pressure Putin have allowed Russia to prolong the conflict and weaken his reputation as a deal-maker. The editorial board of the Wall Street Journal talked about Moody's latest ratings of the U.S. debt, saying that Washington deserved a downgrade, highlighting that U.S. debt is indeed a spending problem, which neither party wants to stop. The article reviews Moody's recent downgrade of U.S. debt, citing high deficits and rising interest costs. It criticizes both political parties for overspending and not addressing the real problem, which is government spending, especially on entitlements. The article notes that while revenues have stayed steady, spending has surged, especially during the pandemic under Presidents Trump and Biden as well. The current deficit is unlikely or unusually high for a growing economy. The author warns that without spending cuts, debt will keep rising. The article doubts Republicans will make big changes as they avoid cutting popular programs. It also warns that new tariffs and possible tax hikes could hurt the economy. The Moody's downgrade is seen as a clear warning for Washington to fix its fiscal policies before a real crisis hits. Another article caught my eye in the Wall Street Journal, tackling a new phenomenon linked to using AI by schools and university students. The issue was touched upon also by many articles in different newspapers, with some going as far as saying that AI is depriving students of basic human skills. However, John Goyette addressed the issue from a different angle in the Wall Street Journal today, offering suggestions on how to stop students from cheating with AI. Goyette, by the way, is Vice President and Dean Emeritus of Thomas Aquinas College, and the article reviews how AI tools like ChatGPT have made cheating common in colleges, making traditional teaching and testing methods less effective. Many students use AI to write essays, for example, and complete assignments, but this harms real learning and critical thinking. Surveys show that most students want AI banned from campus because they value honest education. The author argues that online classes and screens should be limited, and in-person methods like oral exams and class discussions should return. These traditional approaches, such as Socratic seminars, have students think deeply and learn better. The article says colleges have the resources to make these changes if they choose. And in the end, the author believes technology should not replace real education and personal growth in universities. The Financial Times published a report today discerning that being pro-Trump pays dividends as European politics swings sharply to the right. The article reviews recent elections in Romania, Poland, and also Portugal, highlighting a rising tide of right-wing populism across Europe. While centrists, pro-Europe candidates narrowly held onto power, the strong performances of nationalist, Trump-aligned candidates signal growing public discontent with traditional parties. In Romania, George Simeon's far-right party gained significant support, and in Portugal, the anti-immigration Chega party achieved its best results yet. Also, Poland faces a close presidential runoff, with far-right candidates gaining momentum and challenging the political establishment. The article suggests or argues that although centrists remain in control for now, the surge in anti-establishment and populist sentiment is reshaping Europe's political landscape and could have major consequences in future elections. Moving on to The Telegraph, which focused today on Prime Minister Keir Starmer's reset deal with Brussels. Titles like "Kiss Goodbye to Brexit" and "Starmer Gives in to Brussels" appear on its front page, while many opinion articles addressed the issue as well. For one, Lord David Frost who was the chief negotiator for exiting the European Union and then a cabinet minister under the Boris Johnson's government, wrote an article saying this EU reset deal is far worse than he even feared. He believes that Starmer has betrayed Brexit comprehensively and that the will of the people has been flouted. The article offers a critical review of the new UK-EU agreement negotiated by Labour under Starmer, arguing it gives away too much to the EU for little in return. The author lists 5 main concerns: the UK rejoining the EU's agri-food single market, adopting stricter EU energy and carbon rules, delaying control of UK fishing waters until 2038, introducing a youth mobility scheme without clear limits, and finally paying significant fees to the EU for these arrangements. The article claims these concessions undermine British sovereignty and will hurt key industries like farming and fishing. Lord Frost believes Labour's main goal is to get closer to the EU, while the EU remains tough in negotiations, and the article calls on Conservatives to fight to regain lost powers. The European perspective of the economic rapprochement between the UK and the EU was clearly a bit more positive, as depicted in European newspapers like Le Monde. The newspaper published an in-depth report viewing the Monday meetings and consequently the agreement as marking the start of a new alliance between Keir Starmer's Britain and the European Union and a fresh start between the two. The report presents the EU's perspective on the UK-EU summit as cautiously optimistic but pragmatic. EU leaders see the new Security and Defence Pact as a necessary step to formalise cooperation, especially with growing uncertainty over US support for Europe. However, the EU is clear that this pact alone does not guarantee UK access to major EU defence funds, and further alignment is indeed required. The report highlights that Brussels remains firm on key issues, pressing for permanent fishing rights and youth mobility agreements, while viewing the UK's reluctance as a barrier to deeper ties. EU officials stress that real progress depends on the US adopting EU standards and making concrete concessions, signalling that goodwill alone is not enough for a true reset in relations. And we'll end with Politico, which published a report asking why has Elon Musk disappeared from the spotlight. The article details Elon Musk's dramatic fall from political prominence during Trump's second term. Once he was a constant presence at the White House events and a key figure in the government efficiency program and efforts, Musk is now rarely mentioned by Trump or by Republicans or even by official channels. This shift is partly due to Musk's rising unpopularity polls, which show he is less favored than Trump and is seen as a liability, especially after Democrats used his involvement in the Wisconsin Supreme Court race to energize their base and secure a decisive victory. While Musk's cost-cutting initiatives through the Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE, continue, his public role has faded as Republicans focus on other issues. The report concludes that even though Democrats still use Musk as a symbol in campaigns, Musk's diminished profile signals a broader political recalibration around his controversial image. That's it for today. Thanks for watching.